Hey guys, Sherlock here. So we just found out that the new PTR is dropping September 12th. This is where we get a chance to playtest, trial the new perks, give some feedback, and hopefully fix any issues that we find. We're going to have a bit of a first look through the patch notes here and see what significant changes there are. I haven't really had a chance to have a look at this yet. I had to skim through it earlier. So let's skim through it together, find out what the big changes are, and have a bit of a discussion on how it's actually going to affect you as a player. Alright, so it looks like they're looking for feedback on the following changes. The Elysian Wild Zone, so that's the old First Light that has now been remastered as Elysian Wilds. They talked about one of their dev talks that there's still little remnants of First Light in there. So there'll be some little Easter eggs for us to find that'll still make it feel like First Light as it was. There is the main story quest, the new Eden Grove and Great Cleave main story revamp. They did say to us that they wanted to finish the main storyline by the end of this year. I'm not sure if this will be the last changes. I think they're doing another change, season 4 possibly, to a couple of the main storylines, but by the end of this year, the whole MSQ should be finished. The Savage Divide Expedition, I've heard rumors that that's a Beast Ward dungeon. Well, as we find out soon, there's going to be no more Ward, but a Beast-based dungeon. Our mounts, that'll be really interesting to see how that works. I'm a bit worried about how they're going to interact with the environment, scaling mountains, having 100 mounts in one area, what the clipping's going to be like, if you're just going to be lag city. It's going to be really interesting to see what's going on with that. We can have a look at artifacts, the new healer weapon flail, healer / paladin maybe. Weapon perk changes, Primal Fury Heart Rune, trade skill and gear skill changes, influence race, and season 3 rewards track. So this is what the main focus of the PTR is going to be, is testing it, giving feedback, and hopefully if there's any issues they'll actually change them. Alright, so in this section it's just some general bug fixes, nothing too crazy. You can pick up a banana pile in your house. They fix some lighting issues in barnacles. There's nothing too crazy going on in these fixes here. In the AI updates, nothing too crazy to go on there. Just the level 7 invasion outpost rush AI to account for player power increases. So it sounds like invasions and outpost rush creatures will be slightly more difficult. I don't think that's going to affect too much. Combat changes. Here we go. This is the exciting stuff. Weakened status effects can now reduce the effects of acid damage. That is possibly going to make the worm slightly easier, depending on how much it actually weakens the acid. We could see quite a meta shift in the worm raid. If you can weaken it to the point that you can just eat the acid damage, then that could possibly change a little bit. You might not worry about a tank at all. You just have everyone in there just melee. Some sighted carnelian gems cause taunts to not trigger. I think everyone's been a bit cautious about the rune glass taunts for a while, ever since the leeching issue, so I don't know how many people were even really using these. Fixing issue that made attack chains cause client server desyncs. Reduce self-healing consumables in PvP. Dodge distance for medium and heavy equipped loads. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. I think this is more around PvP changes here, between the medium and heavy stuff. I don't think it's going to affect us much on the PvE side. Reduce medium hit sprint delay to 0.75 from 1 second and light hit sprint delay. Really just PvP changes here within movement speed, being able to close the gap and get away from other players. Here we go, attribute bonuses. So we updated the 250 strength attribute bonus to apply the entire basic melee attack and not just on startup. Added 2 new attribute bonus nodes at 25 and 350, and also updated the functionality of and moved around several existing nodes. Updated the Dex 300 attribute to no longer be dodging stamina reduction. It will now cleanse CC status effects on weapon switch with a 15-second cooldown. That's crazy. That'd be really good for like nature and ice mutations. When you get stuck in the puddle, all you've got to do is switch weapons and you can get out of the nature puddle. That'd be really good. it'd just be unfortunate if that is on cooldown. That'd be big in Forge when the shield bash guys stun you. What else is there? You know, when the big brute guys slam you and you get stunned in place, be interesting to see if it cleanses that as well. That could be super interesting actually. Increase HP gain from leveling slightly and increase the amount of HP gain from con slightly. Done to account for the gear score and level increase. Shouldn't really be running any con anyway unless you're tanking, so hey. Damage changes. Increase range of magic weapons base damage globally, but reduce their base damage back down again in PvP fights. So this is the never-ending battle of trying to balance range weapons within PvE. But the main issue with that is the lack of AoE. And you can say, you know, Bow's got AoE with explosive, Rain of Arrows, poison shot. Possibly it could be used as an offhand with a spear or something as some sort of burst damage. But I still don't see it being super viable. Possibly the blunderbuss might become a little bit more viable. But I don't really see range weapons becoming meta within PvE. Added inherent crit damage reduction to players based on equip load. Cool, so that really doesn't affect PvE either. Really, it's like light has 3 pieces of resilient, medium has 4, and heavy has 5. It basically looks like that's where the change is there. Slightly increase the diminishing returns on damage bonus modifiers from attributes from 351 to 500. It's interesting because they're trying to buff the likes of Bow, but Bow only specs into Dex, so if they're reducing their, increasing the diminishing returns, then it's going to be interesting to see how that damage actually stacks up compared to a weapon that has split attributes. Added acid damage and resistance of various existing status effects, gems, and other effects to allow it to function similarly to any other damage type. I wonder if that means it's going to be a gem that you can slot into your weapon to do acid damage, and then that's why they're making the weaken effect acid damage as well. That'll be really interesting to see what works around that. Alright, sword and shield, a couple of bug fixes. Nothing too crazy there. Wind chill to be treated as range instead of melee attacks. That'll be interesting when it comes to the likes of elemental aversion. Actually being able to reduce some damage from that. That'll be really good in Imperium Forge with the ice mages that spike you as well. If you're running elemental aversion, that'll really help there. Alright, so it looks like just some basic bug fixes for blunderbuss, rapier. I don't even know what this weapon is. I don't think that one's even in the game. All jokes aside, look at the bug fixes on these weapons, and then look at musket. Look at everything they've changed on musket. It's such a controversial weapon when it comes to PvP. It's either just absolutely broken, or it's just useless, or there's 50 million bugs with it. Alright, Void Gauntlet fix an issue caused some in-attribute bonuses to not apply to the Void Gauntlet. I'd like to know what those bonuses were. That could make a big difference. Fix an issue that caused the players to not return to Void Blade base attacks after casting Essence Rupture when the Void Blade was active. I never really had that issue. Couple of hatchet fixes. Fixed an issue that caused the Berserk ability to be cancelled and activated without playing the animation. No more Berserk cancel, ladies and gentlemen. Almost 2 years in, they finally fixed the Berserk cancel. How good. A couple of fire staff changes. Nothing that makes any sense to me. Great Axe, Warhammer, nothing crazy. Heart runes. Nothing crazy there. Looks like due to Detonate being able to inherit damage from players and its power being well beyond what was intended, to reduce its power base damage by 20%. They just keep gutting Detonate, don't they? Alright, so perks, rework perks. Rework perks across the board with the following goals. Drop gear should have a much higher chance of yielding 3 usable perks. Players shouldn't need to collect large numbers of required sets of gear and remove perk combinations that are never usable. This here is half true. So you're still going to need multiple sets for gem switches with the new kick, slash, strike and thrust conditioning. You may want that for some bosses. And with the elemental harmony, the plus 2% elemental damage per piece, rapier players are likely going to want a set for each dungeon. As it counts swords and power, at this stage it's probably not worth it for other roles. So things like greatsword, spear, hatchet, sword and shield that are currently at a power cap aren't going to get a benefit from that, whereas rapier will. They have removed some perks, mana, hate reduction, etc. They've reduced the effectiveness of other perks like keen and vicious that are really easy to get, which is interesting because that's where a lot of our DPS comes from. They've reduced the number of gear sets player needs to collect. We will see. Combine 2 stat perks. That's quality of life. That's nice. And they've added a few more perks. As an example, life staff. Common perk changes. Refreshing ward can no longer generate on any new drop gear. Refreshing evasion and luck. Luck scaling has been capped and will no longer scale after 625 gear score. Weapon perk changes. Hated can no longer generate on magic and range weapons. Kind, this perk can no longer generate on any new dropped gear. Vicious, reduce the critical damage from 3, 12, and 13% to 3, 6, and 7. So there's basically a 5% decrease in damage on your crits there straight away. Enchanted has been reduced as well by 5.5%. So that's just as nerf, really. It's interesting. Ruinous, this no longer going to be a perk. Blessed has been reduced from 6, 20, and 12 to 3, 10, and 12. It's interesting. Refreshing move has reduced the cooldown. Life stealing increased the life gain from 5.8% to 7.1%. So it looks like there's a lot more sort of passive healing now rather than direct healing from the healers, especially with the flail. So we might see a lot more lower focus builds, looking at more life stealing, but we'll see. Keenly Empowered has been reduced from 20 to 10%. Keen Speed, the cooldown's been reduced. Alright, they're getting rid of Siphoning Blow, all of the chain abilities. They're improving the scaling for Mortal Lifesteal. They're getting rid of Mortal Siphoning. They're buffing Mortal Energy and Mortal Fortification. They have reduced Keen by 5%, so that 5% number seems to be quite the standard between Vicious and Enchanted Keen so far. All of the Banes are being removed. Vorpal has been reduced, the damage. Looks like by that 5% mark as well. Thwarting Strikes has been nerfed by 4%. Trenchant Strikes has been buffed, so it's not just a charged heavy attack anymore, it's actually any heavy attack, so that's really good. Trenchant Crits, same deal, and Trenchant Rend, same deal. So all your Trenchant Strikes, Crits, and Rends have all been buffed, so they're on any heavy attacks, not are fully charged. So that's actually super interesting. We could look at some more heavy attack sword and shield builds, or even hatchet builds with something like that. You could go a heavy attack hatchet build without fully charging your heavy attacks, and that could actually be some pretty decent damage there, especially with the heavy attack perks within the hatchet tree. All of the shirking abilities have been increased from 6 seconds to 10 seconds, and the attunements have been increased from 1 second to 1.5 seconds on cooldown. Alright, Penetrating Backstab, they changed the label to Damage Con 2, so it can now stack with other damage perks. New weapon perks. Savior. Healing is increased by 10, 18 to 20% when you heal a target below 50% health. Life staff only. Purifying Breeze. Heal for 10, 30 or 33% weapon damage every time you remove a debuff from an ally. Desperate Prayer. When you're below 50% mana, your healing will increase by 10, 18, 20%. Desperate Empower. Deal 12% more damage when you're exhausted. I don't see what that would be on. Unless it's just a general... That's possibly just like a general perk. I really like these shield changes with the Flame Shield Ward. Increasing the base scaling up to 15% is huge. Full Elemental Aversion with an Elemental Tower Shield, you're going to reduce a lot of damage. So that's really interesting for those heavy Tower Shield tanks out there. New shield perks, you got Healing Defense on block, heal for up to 300 health on a Kite Shield. And on counter attack, block, gain a 30% in power for 4 seconds on Kite Shield. I still don't know if Kite Shield's going to be very viable unless they change the weight range of it. It's very hard to get an optimal weight range with a Kite Shield. I'm just going to quickly skim through these and read out any that I think are actually important. Empowering Rending Throw. The increased scaling multiplier past 625 hatchet attacks now deal up to 40% extra damage against Rending Throw targets. That's a lot. That'll be hitting hard. That'll be really good. See, this is what I'm wondering about the hatchet now with the heavy attacks with Trenchant Strikes. If you had Empowering Rending Throw in there as well, it could be quite good, especially in pugs. You could go sort of a heavy attack tree and use it as a throwing weapon on bosses that some pugs may struggle with. It could become a really pug-friendly weapon. And still being able to use Rending Throw to add some rends. It looks like they're changing Infected Throw as well. Increase the base scaling multiplier. Direct hits with Infected Throw cause exhaustion, reducing target stamina regen. Powering Armor Breaker. The damage bonus will not scale past 50%. That is fine. Alright, Repulsing Clear Out. Renamed and changed it functionally to Sundering Clear Out. Inflicts Rend. The reducing target's armor by 5, 8.5 and 10% weapon. Oh, on the weapon up to 25% extra rend for 7 seconds. So on... Unless they're changing Sundering Shockwave, hammers are just going to be rend machines. You got 30% on Armor Breaker. Up to 25% on Clear Out and up to 14% on Shockwave. That's crazy. You're pretty much gonna want a Shockwave, Armor Breaker, Clear Out hammer on every team now. That's just a crazy amount of rend. Sweeps Coup de Grace, increase the bleed damage while on weapons, and now applies bleed on bleed for armor, 15% and weapon up to 28% of weapon damage. They've buffed the bleed by 11%. That's crazy. Buff Cyclone, Leeching. They've buffed Fortifying Perforate back up. I felt like they over nerfed it in the last change because they reduced it. I can't remember what it was. It was like 15% per hit, and then they reduced it down to like 5% per hit or something. Yeah, I felt like that was overkill with Fortify not really being as strong as it used to be. Keen Tondo now also reduces weapon damage you take from foes affected by Tondo's bleed. On the armor, 7.5%, and on the weapon, up to 15% damage reduction. Now, is that going to count as a personal decrease, or is that like a global weaken? That's going to be the interesting thing. Leeching Flurry, increase the gear score bonus while on a weapon and added 1 second of invulnerability when activating Flurry. 1 second of invulnerability. Alright, I've got a spicy little build that we're going to talk about in another video. I think Rapier Tank could be very best soon, but we will do a video on that. Refreshing Fletch. Accelerate. Alright, so I think Light's Embrace is going to end up replacing probably Orb of Protection. Lowering its base from 5 to 3% and made more effective on weapons. Allies below full health hit with Light's Embrace gain haste. So on the weapon you're going to get a 30% haste for 5 seconds. Up the top we saw... So in the section here we see Purifying Breeze. Heal for up to 33% weapon damage every time you remove a debuff from an ally. So if you're removing a debuff with Light's Embrace, then you're going to get the extra healing anyway, so that's going to be interesting to see how that works. Alright, here we go. Here's another good change. Slowing tether. Renamed to paralyzing tether, this perk now causes a root when the tether is broken. Just another broken thing. It already gives you weaken, it gives you empower, and now it roots them in place as well. Like, it's just crazy, man. Alright, armor perk changes. They are removing all... Alright, armor perk changes. They are removing all wards. So all mob specific wards are getting removed. Along with resistances, corruption resistance, blight resistance, resilient, indestructible, vigor, invigorated, shirking heals, and siege ward are all gone. But we have some new perks for you. So we've got health, which is up to a 2.4% max health per piece. Enchanted ward, which is a reduced damage from light and heavy attacks. I'm not sure how that's going to look in PvE. I don't know how it works with mobs, whether that counts as light and heavy attack. If it is, then it's basically just a universal ward. I don't see it being viable in PvE. Grit ward. Now this is the other video we spoke about just before. This is what's going to make it very viable. Flame harmony. So this is what I was talking about earlier, which is empower. So when it comes to this elemental damage, often it's empower, which at the moment is capped at 50%. So your weapons like greatsword, spear, hatchet, all your main DPS weapons are all basically at empower cap anyway. Void gauntlet. The only thing that really is empower stuffed is the rapier. Especially the fact that you're going to have the extra elemental damage from the int perks. You're basically going to want one of those sets for each dungeon. Unless they up the empower cap, then every role is going to want one of these. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens around this. This is basically what's going to determine whether you need a set for each mob type or not. Slash, thrust, and strike conditioning. These will be really nice for some boss switches, but at the same time, usually when you're a DPS and you're getting hit by some sort of slash attack, it's usually one-shotting you anyway, so they may not actually end up being a big deal. They might be bigger for healers to have slash conditioning to deal with the likes of crawlers and fiends, because they usually do slash damage. But apart from that, these probably aren't going to be used that often. Alrighty, flame protection. So it looks like all the elemental protections are being increased. That's super interesting. So where are we? Increase the base from 5% to 15%. Okay, so the top end of this isn't changing. It's just the base end at the lower gear scores by the looks of it. Because all the elemental protection amulets we're using are all going to be 15% anyway. So that doesn't really affect the bulk of us. Health is renamed to Adored Health, reduced the health bonus from 10% to 7%. I guess that's to account for the extra health increase with the gear score, otherwise that could kind of get out of hand. I imagine a 5 on DPS is going to end up sitting around that kind of 9k health mark, I want to say, but we'll have to see. Fortified recovery, they reduce the cooldown. Divine no longer improves the healing from potions. Alright, new amulet perks. Alchemist Reprieve improves healing from potions by 10%. Meh. Refreshing recovery. When your health drops below 50%, your active ability cooldowns will reset. 90-second cooldown. That could be super interesting. Especially in some dungeons where there's a long journey between each fight. You may use that once per mob pack, which could really change the outcome. So that there could possibly become a mandatory. Some ring perk changes. They're increasing leeching slightly. They are getting rid of siphoning, and they are slightly buffing all of the ring damages. So this is where possibly they'll look at increasing the empower cap, because everything that has empower, they're increasing it slightly. So it'll be interesting to see if they increase the empower cap. If they don't, then there's no reason to have the harmony, what do you call them? The elemental harmonies on your armor. Unless they up the empower cap, it's just not going to be worth it. Alright, Keen Awareness. Keen Awareness has decreased the crit bonus slightly and move this to the crit exclusive label. The Getting Rid of Brilliant and Invigorated Punishment has been reduced slightly. A couple of new ring perks. You got Healing Breeze, which is when you directly heal a target, you apply a 5-second healing buff. So that's another plus for using Light's Embrace. You've got the haste, you've got the buff removal, and you've got this healing buff here. So you're probably going to end up looking at Sacred Beacon and Light's Embrace, I would say, especially with the Fortify changes. Orb's not looking that great. You may drop Beacon instead of Orb just for the cooldown, but with all of the crit reductions, you're going to want Keen Beacon. So I would say you're going to be looking at Sacred Beacon, possibly Light's Embrace. Some earring perk changes. They're removing Focused, Beloved, Evasive, Mana Toast, and Refreshing Toast has been reduced. Sorry, this is the biggest shock to me. Reduce the bonus to 10% at 700 and reduce base healing and regen potion cooldowns from 30 seconds to 25 seconds. Okay, so they're nerfing Refreshing Toast slightly, but they are also reducing the cooldown on the potions. I think the fact of having water potions changing slightly and not reducing on hits, that could you may not need Refreshing Toast as much. It's going to be interesting with them removing Beloved. I'm hoping they're increasing the threat slightly on Despised. Otherwise pugs are going to get very upset with their tanks. Alright, new airing perks. Empowering Toast, give 20% empower for 4 seconds on potion drink. Fortifying Toast and Healing Heart. Healing Heart's interesting, 10% in max health. If you're running low con, I don't think any of these are going to really make a big change, especially with what we were talking about before about basically being in a power cap. Unless they increase in power cap to 80 to 100%, a lot of these empowered, it's not going to matter. Alright, adjusted the Keen Tondo perk to only provide the benefit if the rapier is active. Now the thing we need to find out about that is if it's the rapier that used the Tondo, or if you have to have the rapier itself to get the benefits of it. So at the moment everyone can have Keen Tondo in their armor and only one rapier needs to be using Tondo, but we need to find out if it only applies to the person, the one rapier that actually used the Tondo, because it's going to change a lot either way. Alright, raise the maximum gear score 65 to 700, maximum crafting 200 to 250. Reduce the weapon mastery XP by 30%. They also talked in their dev video that that's mainly at the high levels, around the level 15 to 20 mark, where their XP is going to be reduced. Increased family-based ward potion durations and decrease their value to 5, 7 and 10%. These buffs will no longer end based on a number of hits. So they talked about making it kind of last the dungeon, so I imagine they're going to last maybe around that 30-minute mark. But dungeons with multiple mob types, you're going to need to be taking probably up to 3 or 4 ward potions a dungeon, which isn't that bad when we currently use upwards of 10 a dungeon. Introduce the loot biasing system that will skew the outcome of loot drops towards a player's equip weight, primary and secondary attributes, and equipped weapon types. Alright, Umbral Shards. You're going to be able to salvage your Umbral Shards for 0.1 coin per Umbral Shard. So basically, if you think about it, every 10k shards is going to be 1k gold. So it's going to be a nice... There's a few people, especially in the community that I hang out in, that will have between sort of 1 and 5 million shards. It's not going to be game breaking. Don't stress about it. Even if you got 1 million shards, you're only getting 100k out of it. They're going to blow their own materials to level up armoring, you know? It's not going to be economy breaking. I wouldn't get too upset about that. They're introducing wild cards, so you can use 1 wild card when it comes to your season pass. So if you're consistently getting 3 out of the 4, but you can't quite hit that 4th one unless you have to go out of your way, you're going to be able to get 1 wild card per day, I believe, that you can use in that slot. Alright, scrolling down the list here, it doesn't seem to be anything else too notable. Yeah, looking at this, it's just lots of little bug fishes. Fishes? Bug fishes swimming in the ocean. Cool. Alrighty guys, so that's our first look at the patch notes. There's nothing too crazy going on there. I'm going to have a lot of work soon updating the new website that we've been working on, which is here, newworldbuilds.com. So at the moment, it's pretty much set up for Season 2. We have all our skill trees, etc. set up in here. So check that out. We're going to get it updated for Season 3 once we play a bit on the PTR and understand what the new meta is going to be. A couple more things to test around how Tondo is going to work. New empower caps, ren caps, if they're changing at all, how health is going to work. And then we'll be able to get back to you and give you a bit of an idea of what the meta is going to look like. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and yeah, we will see you very soon.